Hello everyone, this is the finale of What If Naruto and Ino was detectives, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Naruto. Ino whispered. He glanced at her, and she tipped her head toward the floor. Naruto had no trouble whatsoever spotting the dark pool of blood. Hell, whoever was out there was either putting on a very convincing show with fake blood, or else the man was genuinely s. Call for backup, Naruto reminded her, and he shouted to the person on the other side of the door. Who's out there? Kabuto, the man finally answered. Even though Ino didn't waver from calling headquarters, Naruto saw the relief flash through her eyes. It wasn't her brothers out there but Yakushi Kabuto. That realization would help her regain her focus. Thank goodness. Because Naruto was 100% sure they'd both need all the focus they could get. Someone shot me, Kabuto added. He sounded as if he was getting weaker by the moment. But the key words were as if, because there were a lot of as ifs about this situation that could get them ked. Backup's on the way, Ino let him know. Naruto nodded and returned his attention to the pseudo-interrogation with his possibly wounded suspect. Who shot you? I don't know. I didn't see who it was, but the bullet was fired from a gun with a silencer. I didn't hear it until I was too late. Please let me in. Oh yeah, like they were going to do that any time soon. Kabuto was their number one suspect, and this was exactly the kind of trap a guy like him would try to pull. I think it might have been Karen who shot me, Kabuto tried again. I've been following her. He paused for another of those gasps. And I think she might be the sniper. It's funny you mentioned that. I was thinking the same thing about you, Naruto coldly told the other man. Not me. And Kabuto repeated it like a mantra. A mantra that got weaker with each word. Naruto glanced at the pool of blood. It was spreading. If by some miracle Kabuto was telling the truth, he was bleeding out fast. Should I call an ambulance? Ino asked. He nodded. But tell them the same thing you told backup. I don't want him to approach the suspect. I want him to wait until they have clearance from either me, you or the backup offices. Karen's crazy enough to do this, Kabuto went on, the pitch of his voice wavering wildly. She has this problem, she flies off the handle when a man rejects her. She's been stalking Sasori. Naruto hadn't needed Kabuto to tell him that. What were you doing here anyway? Watching you and Ino, he readily admitted. I figured if Karen wasn't the sniper, then maybe it was the two of you. I wanted to stop anyone else from playing detective could be dangerous, Naruto growled. He hurried past the door to the other window and peered through the corner of the blinds. There was enough light from the nearby apartment complex for him to see the shadowy figure lying on the small concrete entry just outside the door. The person was curled up in a fetal position, maybe out of fear. Or maybe, Kabuto was trying to conceal a weapon. Is he armed? Ino whispered. She put the phone on the snack bar and aimed both her guns at the door. Naruto shook his head. I can't tell. And that left him with a serious dilemma. If by some miracle, what Kabuto said was the truth, if Karen indeed shot him, then the man needed help. Render assistance, was what Naruto had been taught to do. That was training. Procedure. But if this was a trap, then the sniper was the one calling the shots. Literally. Because when the backup or the ambulance arrived in the next couple of minutes, that would put them in the line of fire, as well. If it comes down to a situation where someone negates the rules, trust Ino, Shikamaru had said. All in all, it was damn good advice. What does your gut instinct say about this? Naruto asked her in a whisper. Ino blinked, probably surprised that he put this on her shoulders, but he was positive her shoulders could handle it. She glanced at the blood again. I don't think Kabuto's the sniper. He wouldn't have gotten this close because he doesn't trust me not to K him on the spot. My guess is he's the bait. And I think if we open that door, then someone will open fire on us. Naruto nodded. Everything she said made sense. So he had his answer, and took it one step further. Moving back to the window and without touching the blinds, He looked out into the parking lot for any sign of the person who'd likely shot Kabuto and was trying to use the man to draw him out. See anything? Ino asked. No. Well, nothing other than at least 3 dozen cars, all jammed into the space that separated the 2 multi-story apartment buildings. But a car probably wouldn't have given the sniper a good view, since their apartment was on the 2nd floor. No, he or she would want to be higher. Naruto's gaze combed over the masonry fence located at the back of the parking lot. It was a possibility and would provide an escape since there was an alley by it and then a street just on the other side. But the angle was all wrong. It was the same for the street on the left. A bad angle, and it was way too visible. This guy liked to stand back, aim and fire. He liked hiding. That left the 3-story building directly across from them. It was a good deduction, he soon realized. Because Naruto caught a glint of something. Just a glimmer of movement. Get down. He yelled to Ino and dove for the floor right before the shot came crashing through the window where he'd been standing. Ino hit the floor, sheltering her face and eyes from the flying glass. Naruto did the same, but in their scramble to get away from the gunfire, they ended on opposite sides of the room. And worse, the gunfire wasn't a single shot. Another quickly followed and tore its way through what was left of the glass. And another. Just like the night in the alley and that day at the church, it was a barrage. Those shots are too high to have come from Kabuto, Naruto shouted over the blasts. Ino agreed. That meant she'd been right about him not being the sniper. For all the good it had done her. They were still pinned down. Still in danger. But at least the sniper didn't seem to be shooting at Kabuto. Now that she knew he might be an innocent player in this, she didn't want another bullet hitting him. The bedroom. Naruto yelled. Ino kept her weapon in her hands, but she threw open the door so that Kabuto could perhaps get inside. He did, crawling and groaning, and she saw the still spreading stain of blood on his shoulder and the front of his shirt. No weapon, but even if he'd had one, he was likely too weak to use it. The ambulance is on the way, she told Kabuto. Stay down. With Naruto yelling for her to hurry, she crawled toward him. Not easily. The bulky dress got in her way. And even after she got into the bedroom, Ino discovered it wasn't much safer than the area they'd just left. The single window near the head of the bed was taking a pounding as well, and there was glass strewn all over the bedding. She reached over the debris and grabbed their communicators from the nightstand. If they got separated during an escape, they'd need them. Naruto circled an arm around her waist and pushed her into the bathroom. He didn't stop there. He got them into the tiled shower. A temporary safe haven. But only temporary. Only long enough for them to come up with a plan. The shots continued through the bedroom window and were already gashing holes in the wall. If the sniper kept the firepower pinpointed, then those bullets would eventually come through the tile. How about the balcony? She asked. It's on the opposite side of the building from those shots. Naruto's gaze met hers, and she knew it was something he had already considered. And he'd also already dismissed it because of the danger. Whoever that sniper is, he or she will kill anyone who tried to help us, Ino pointed out. The stray shots. There aren't enough stray shots, Naruto insisted. Somehow, she heard him over the racket and over the pounding of her heartbeat. He was right. There weren't many strays. The shots were going through the window with much better than average precision, far more accurate than the gunfire they'd encountered at the church or in the alley. This pattern was more like the first shooting. The one that had killed Sakura and her groom. Ino might have taken longer to consider that inconsistency if a bullet hadn't come through the wall and the tile. Naruto shoved her down with the bits of ceramic and plaster. The deafening noise continued to crash around them. We'll go out to the balcony, Naruto instructed. We'll climb down the fire escape and circle back around to the edge of the building. I might be able to get a good enough look to pick off the sniper. You think the sniper's on the roof of that apartment building? She asked. I know he is. I got a glimpse of something before he fired. I'm almost positive he's on the right side of a huge ventilation shaft where no one can see him from the street. And it would also allow the gunman refuge since it'd take a while for the cops to block off the street. Then, he could probably escape over that fence into the alley. From there he'd simply fade into the city. Unless they stopped him first. What do you want me to do? Ino asked. He ducked his head when a shot rammed through another section of the tile. After we're on the ground, one of us will need to go to the left of the building. For a distraction. A necessary one. If she had the layout of the roof correct in her mind, the left was the sniper's blind side since he was on the right of the ventilation shaft. That meant one of them had to be the diversion while the other delivered the shot that would hopefully take him out. You'll be the diversion, Naruto insisted. Because it was the safer of the two positions. The sniper would have to leave cover to return fire at the person creating the diversion. But if the shooter didn't do that, if the ploy didn't work, then what would leave the person on the right, Naruto, in the Kerr's direct line of fire? Oh, it wasn't a scenario she even wanted to consider. Ino would have much preferred to take the more dangerous route herself. In fact, her heart screamed for her to do just that, to protect him at all cost. But she couldn't. She couldn't. Because it wasn't just their lives at stake. Kabuto needed to get medical attention, fast. But she couldn't stop the fear. Nothing could do that. Her hand was trembling when she DR'd the communicator around his N and did the same to hers. Ino pressed her mouth to his. Something brief, but hopefully it said a lot more than words, because they didn't have time for long explanations. Don't you dare fail, she insisted. His jaw muscles went to war with each other. You either. That was it for goodbyes. But it was enough. When we get outside, hurry, Naruto insisted, swallowing hard. Use every bit of speed that I know you have because I don't want you out in the open any longer than necessary. Maintain cover and fire a shot or two to get his attention. That's it. Only a shot or two, and only if it's safe. She nodded, took a deep breath, and the moment he said, "Let's go," Ino did. They stayed on the floor, crawling their way to the balcony. There was a pause in the shots. As he'd done at the church, the gunman was probably reloading or trading weapons. Naruto and she used that lapse to their advantage. They went out onto the balcony and climbed over the railing to the fire escape. Equipment check, she said into her communicator. I hear you, Naruto responded. The shots started up again. Another barrage. Another attempt to kill whoever got in the way. Adrenaline was like a knife cutting through her lungs. The thick humid air didn't help, either. But she ran, even in the heels and the dress. Ino ran as if her very life depended on it. Because it did. And not just her life, but Naruto's, too. If she blew this diversion, then the sniper would go after him. That couldn't happen. She slowed down as she neared the corner and checked her surroundings to make sure the angle of the shots hadn't changed. They hadn't. The sniper was still on the roof, even though she couldn't see him. Not even a glimpse. And that was what she had to remedy. She needed him or her out in the open for at least a second or two. I'm in position, she relayed to Naruto. So am I. You go on 3. I'll go on 4. 1. They counted in unison. 2. 3. Ino pulled her breath, darted out from behind the cover of the building. And fired. So did the sniper. Right at her. It had happened too fast. On the count of 3, Naruto had expected to hear Ino's shot, and by 4, he figured the sniper would come out from the cover to take aim at her. By 5, Naruto was supposed to have already fired a sly shot that would keep Ino out of harm's way. He was wrong. Things didn't happen as planned. Ino fired. He'd heard that all right. But then, the sniper fired, too. Immediately. Not a second later as he should have done. 1,000 thoughts went through Naruto's head. None good. This was what he feared most. Not losing a promotion. Not blowing a case. But losing Ino. He couldn't lose her. Say something. Naruto demanded into his communicator. And he held his breath. I'm okay. Those 2 words were the most welcome 2 words he'd ever heard. Naruto leaned his shoulder against the building and let it support him. He missed, Ino added. I'll try again. No. He'll be looking for you. He aimed right at you, Ino, and that means he's not hiding behind the ventilation shaft but he's crouched down in front of it. Okay, and she repeated it. So how about this? ISTS off the dress and toss it into the parking lot. It's big enough and light-colored enough to make a great distraction. When he fires at it, I'll shoot to draw him out, and then you can do your thing. He didn't have enough breath left to ask about that, and from the ragged pauses in her own breathing and the sound of tearing fabric, he could tell she was already getting out of that dress. Naruto moved into position. On 3, Ino said. And she didn't hesitate long enough for him to change his mind. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. Then, something. A blast of sound. from Ino's gun. And once again, the sniper fired right at her without so much as lifting his head. But this time, Naruto did see the barrel of the rifle. Talk to me, Ino, Naruto barked. She didn't. Not one word. Talk to me, he repeated. She dove into some shrubs. Naruto heard someone say through his communicator. Not Ino, but Chuji. Is she all right? Naruto immediately asked. Hard to say. Not the reassurance Naruto needed, especially since she wasn't giving him that reassurance herself. He consoled himself with the possibility her communicator had been damaged in the fall. How about you, Chuji again? You have a visual on this sniper. If I did, he'd already be S. But what Naruto did have was the next best thing. He knew the sniper's position. If he aimed just below where he'd seen the rifle, that he could perhaps K him before he did any more damage. First though, he had to make sure Ino was all right. Ino, he barked. If you're there, please talk to me. The next few seconds dragged into an eternity. We'll keep monitoring this line, and I'll do some adjusting to see if we can increase reception so we can contact her, Chuji explained. We're assembling a team to go on the roof, but we're still a good 10, maybe 15 minutes out. At the moment, 10 or 15 was a couple of lifetimes. They didn't have lifetimes. Make sure that masonry fence is covered, Naruto insisted. It is. Don't worry. If this guy tries to get down, he won't get far. Maybe. But it was a risk Naruto didn't want to take. He wanted to end it here and now, after he made sure Ino was safe. More seconds. Long ones. And just when Naruto was ready to break into a run and check on Ino, her voice came through the communicator. Naruto, can you hear me? Loud and clear. Thank goodness. He was glad he was still leaning against the wall. I thought I'd lost you. No way. My communicator fell off, and I had to find it. Are you okay? I am now. Stay put. I'll get this guy. Wait. Just please don't do anything dangerous, although I know that it just will be. And she knew she was right. There was nothing they could do about it. Just remember, stay put. Naruto ordered. Naruto, I'm in love with you, Ino blurted out. Okay. So he hadn't exactly been expecting her to say that. And she likely didn't know her brother, and heaven knows who else was listening in on their conversation. Naruto didn't have to inform her of that, or time to respond. He saw the rifle again, and he automatically zoomed in on it. He took aim. Shut out everything else. His focus pinpointed to that one spot. And he fired. 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 Silence followed. The sounds of the city and the nearby street slowly began to penetrate his consciousness. He shut them out as well, all the sounds, all the flurries of movement on the street, and Naruto concentrated just on that one spot on the roof. A sign of activity, any activity, and he'd fire again. I think you got him, Ino said into the communicator. So do I. Maintain your position just in case. And if the sniper was indeed S, then it was all over. Well, maybe. Please tell me you weren't hurt, she demanded. I'm fine. You. Just a scratch or two. Naruto cursed. Our definitions of scratches aren't the same. He'd have a medic check her out ASAP. She paused and Naruto could hear her heavy breath. Or was it his? It'll either be Karen or Tomiyama on that roof, Ino said. Because I think all of this was done to cover up the first shooting, those first two mus. So Ino had come up to the same conclusion he had. Not surprising at all. Either Tomiyama had wanted to get back at his ex, or else Karen had wanted to eliminate the happy groom. It explained the reason the first shots had been accurate. Either Karen or Tomiyama had fired with intent to K. Everything else had been sloppy, a dangerous facade designed to mask the Kerr's motive. Until tonight. Tonight had been to eliminate Ino and him because they'd obviously gotten too close to the truth. Heck, the sniper had almost succeeded. We have a visual of the body on the roof, Chuji said through the communicator. It was the only green light he needed. Naruto turned to find Ino. She found him first. He'd hardly gotten to the back corner when he almost ran into her. They skidded to a stop. Stared at each other. There was indeed a thin scratch on her chin, but other than that, she was fine. Ino launched herself into his arms. He was right there to catch her. And kiss her. It was probably their shortest kiss ever. Sergeant Uzumaki. Someone immediately called out. It was Shikamaru. He was already on the scene, and after another glance, Naruto realized he wasn't the only one. At least half a dozen other officers were there as well. With the wedding dress thrown over his shoulder, Shikamaru approached them and handed it to Ino as she eased out of Naruto's embrace. The press is here, Shikamaru said. Which meant there'd likely be pictures. She put on the dress, probably because it beat the alternative of being photographed in her slip. Her friend gave her a warm hug and whispered, "Good job." Shikamaru said the same to Naruto before they were interrupted for an update on Kabuto. The man was alive and would be taken to the hospital. The routine chaos started. The inevitable aftermath of a violent crime. There was the wail of the ambulance coming for Kabuto. Shouts. Orders. The smell of gunfire and leftover adrenaline. It wasn't surprising Naruto soon found himself engulfed in it. A medic pulled Ino aside, checking her scratch, while Chuji came over the communicator with an update of his own. The sniper's Dr. Tomiyama, he heard Chuji say. And he's DOA. Good shooting, Uzumaki. So it was really over. Well, except for one not so minor detail. There was Ino's comment about being in love with him. That required Naruto to take a deep breath or two. Now that they weren't in a life and death situation, he wanted to get her take on it. Maybe it had been the adrenaline and fear talking and not. Hell, he didn't even want to finish that. Naruto turned to find her, but she'd already disappeared into the gathering crowd of officers and medics. Ino cranked up the music as loud as she could stand it. Nickelback did their part, Chad's gritty voice belting out the words to "burn it to the ground," as her running shoes pounded against the sidewalk. She ran fast, much faster than her usual Sunday morning pace from her apartment to her parents' home. She pushed herself hard, harder, until her muscles protested, until her heart pounded. But it still wasn't fast enough. The thoughts she'd been trying to keep at bay caught up with her, and no matter how much she kicked up the pace, no matter how high she cranked up the volume, the thoughts just kept coming. Thoughts of Okur and his victims. Naruto and she had stopped Tomiyama Kenji. A cold-blooded cur who according to his own computer diary had refused to give up the woman he loved or go to jail for Ming-her. He'd been willing to hurt or even kill others to cover that crime, and by Tomiyama's own admission, he'd wanted Naruto and her after he became suspicious of them. But in the end, Naruto and she had prevented Tomiyama from killing others, including Yakushi Kabuto. He was alive and recovering in the hospital. Hisagi Karen, Hiroko Sasori and the other perfect match clients were all safe, as well. Heck, even a lot of the paperwork for the case had been finished. The only thing missing was Naruto. They'd spoken, of course, briefly, in the halls at headquarters as they were shuffled from one interview to the other. She'd had time to give him back his grandmother's ring and little else since a great deal of the past day and a half had involved hours of separate sessions with internal affairs and supervisors. All routine. All part of the checks and balances to make sure Sly Force had been warranted. Not that anyone had ever thought differently. Tomiyama had had to be stopped. The interviews were just time-consuming square fillers. But now those interviews were done, the squares had been filled, and Naruto still hadn't contacted her. Ino ran harder. The night of the shooting, she'd told him that she loved him, on an open communicator, she'd since learned. Her friends and probably plenty of other people had heard her, so certainly Naruto hadn't missed it. Or maybe he had. Maybe he'd wanted to miss it. And maybe the excessive endorphins from the run were simply making her crazy. She slowed into a cooldown, hoping it'd cool her thoughts. It didn't. The "I love you," she told him kept resounding in her head. And "I love you," that was real, and yet it hadn't been said to her in return. No amount of running could take the sting out of that. She felt as if her heart were breaking into a million pieces. Ino did some extra minutes of cooldown to give herself time for a serious attitude adjustment. That didn't work, either. Since she felt on the verge of crying, she cut through the backyard, hoping to sneak into her parents' house and grab a shower before the rest of the Yamanaka clan as well as her best friends Shikamaru and Chuji, showed up for Sunday brunch. Of course, she didn't hold out much hope, but at least that way she could cry in private. "There you are," her father greeted before Ino even got through the door. Not that a greeting in itself was unusual, but her father wasn't cooking. He wasn't even wearing his "kiss the cook" apron, and there wasn't so much as a whiff of waffles and bacon. Ino turned off her music, slipped off her headphones and peered past her father into the sprawling kitchen. Her family was already there. Both Chuji and Shika as well as his daughter, Kumiko. With the exception of Kumiko, they were all staring at her as if she had the answers to questions that she didn't know had been asked. Aunt Ino, Kumiko shouted. Hey, Kumi-chan. Kumiko bolted for her, and Ino scooped her up in her arms, giving her a full circle spin around. She planted a sloppy kiss on her cheek. A kiss that earned her a giggle. Any idea what's going on? Ino whispered to Kumiko. Not that she expected an answer from a 2.5-year-old. Kumiko cupped her small hands around her mouth and tried to whisper back. It's a secret. That didn't narrow it down much. Mom, Ino greeted, giving her a kiss on the cheek as well. There wasn't a strand of her mother's sandy blonde hair out of place, and she'd already applied makeup. Hardly her normal Sunday routine. Her mom brushed her fingers over the scratch on Ino's chin, issued a disapproving grunt, and that's when Ino noticed she had no mega mug of coffee in her hands. Definitely abnormal. The woman stood shoulder to shoulder next to Shikamaru and appeared to have been waiting for her. What? Ino asked cautiously. Did something go wrong with the Tomiyama case? Everything's fine, Shikamaru started. The last few ends were tied up when Karen volunteered to go back into therapy for her relationship issues. Yeah, therapy with a shrink who doesn't murder people, Chuji added, obviously spelling it out since Kumiko was listening. Oh, and Kabuto wanted me to tell you how sorry he was about the incident in the hall at Perfect Match, and he wanted to thank you for saving his life. Nothing wrong with any of that, which only made Ino more suspicious. So if it's not the Tomiyama case, why are all of you staring at me? And then it hit her. Wait, does this have anything to do with the investigation into the favoritism allegations? No, Shikamaru assured her. The chief decided to terminate the inquiry for lack of evidence. In other words, Naruto intervened, and justice had been served. So if it's not that or the Tomiyama case, then what is it? Her best friends exchanged a couple of glances, lifted eyebrows and other assorted facial gestures before Shikamaru extended high hand to her. Congratulations, Sergeant Yamanaka. It took several moments for that to sink in. I got the promotion, she gasped. Somehow, amazingly, Ino had forgotten all about it. The hugs started. Ditto for the excited kisses and well wishes from her parents. Ino braced herself for the flood of joy, the rush of success. And it happened. Sort of it. But it was more of a trickle than a flood. What about Naruto? She asked. Kumiko wriggled out of her GS. Did he make lieutenant? Chuji and Shikamaru traded another of those ocular volleys, and this time they included Ino's parents in the raised eyebrow exchanges. Told you, Chuji assured them. Told them what? But Ino wasn't entirely sure she wanted to hear this. Chuji shrugged as if the answer were obvious. That you're in love with Uzumaki Naruto. She huffed. A short burst of air that hopeful was a vague enough reaction so she wouldn't have to out and out lie. She didn't want to discuss this with anyone until she'd had time to. Heck, she didn't even know what she wanted to do about it. Sulking, maybe even crying, was a distinct possibility. Well, are you? Her mother asked, staring at her with eyes that were a genetic copy of her own. Ino went on the offensive. Not with her mother, but she aimed her offensive attention at Shikamaru. Did Naruto get the promotion or not? He got it. He'll be put in charge of special investigations. But the answer didn't come from Shikamaru. Ino's gaze flew across the room, to the adjoining family room. And there he was, Lieutenant Uzumaki Naruto, sitting on the sofa. He got up, slid his hands into the pockets of his great-fitting jeans and ambled toward her. Congratulations, Sergeant. He smiled. Just smiled. Now here was the rush, and the rest of the room faded away. Congratulations, Lieutenant, the platinum blonde managed to say. Naruto dropped by to bring back my wedding dress, her mother explained, causing the room to re-enter the fringes of Ino's consciousness. But even that couldn't get her attention off the hot-looking man walking toward her. You left it at headquarters the night of the shooting. One of the reasons I came was to return the dress, Naruto clarified. I'm also here to ask Ino about something. From that look, the question wasn't about Tomiyama or a report. Her heart landed in the vicinity of her knees. Oh yeah, Chuji commented. He nudged Shikamaru with his elbow. Naruto nodded, without taking his eyes away from her. I wanted to ask her to marry me. Okay. Another rush. Well, more like an avalanche. Ino was sure her family was doing a lot of glance exchanges, elbow nudges and the like, but she didn't care. Naruto was going to ask her to marry him. And what do you think she'll say? Chuji again. Naruto stopped right in front of her. I'm hoping she'll say yes once she knows I'm in love with her and that I want to spend the rest of my life with her. He hooked his finger into the waist of her running shorts and pulled her to him. He touched his mouth to Ino's. She felt that simple kiss from head to toe. I'm positive she'll say yes, Ino smiled. Positive? Naruto questioned, the corner of his mouth lifting. It's a sure thing. So this was what it was like to be totally in love. Sweet heaven. There was nothing like it. Not the thrill of an arrest, not the promotion. Not even the badge. Just an overwhelming sense that everything was right. The room went silent. For a moment or two. Until her mother squealed. A second wave of congratulations, hugs and well wishes started, and she found herself in some very loving arms. Including Naruto's. You knew about this, Ino whispered to Chuji and Shikamaru, noting that both were grinning as much as the others. And you guys, approve of it? Shikamaru shrugged. Hey, as long as he makes you happy, then we're fine with it. Ino hugged her two best friends. After several more minutes of celebrating, Naruto asked if he could have just a few moments alone with his wife-to-be. As soon as the couple were given their own space, Naruto never once let go of her. Are you upset I chose a public proposal? He asked. Are you serious? Of course, not. Ino told him. Well, I thought it was only fair after your public announcement on the communicator. Naruto kissed her fully on the lips. Ino winced, but that public announcement would save them some time. Everyone at the headquarters probably knew how she felt about Uzumaki Naruto. I'd like to invite your family to the wedding, she said while she could still speak. The kiss he gave her seriously put a damper on what was left of that particular ability. Any objections? He shook his head. None. Knowing you, you'll be able to talk them into coming. Between her father and her, it was practically guaranteed. It'll be a new beginning. Naruto took her hand and slipped his grandmother's ring back on her finger. A new start. A new life. Oh, and lots of great S. Ino ran her tongue over her bottom lip and felt a nice jolt when she tasted him there. Great S, huh? She smiled. But you left something out, the happily ever after part. I didn't leave that out. Naruto laced their fingers together. Drew her against him. With us, happily ever after is a given. Yes, it was. A true perfect match. And Naruto let her know with a long, lingering kiss. The end. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.